Welcome to an episode of the Product Coalition European Tour Copenhagen series, where today I'm very excited to be joined by Jayden and Helena Levison. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're my first crew to chat to in Copenhagen, so I'm really excited to kick off the Copenhagen series with yourselves. Now, before we get stuck in, I need to shout out about this tour because this episode and every single episode is dedicated to raising awareness and support for the bushfire-affected communities and wildlife in Australia. If you enjoyed this episode, please show your support for these amazing causes by visiting bushfire.productcoalition.com, or to learn more about the European Tour, visit tour.productcoalition.com. Now, I'm visiting 5 cities across Europe to interview over 50 product leaders to gain insights, knowledge and experience to share with you, the Product Coalition global community. If you just discovered the Product Coalition, welcome. We're a global product community with over 500,000 readers, 6,000 Slack members and thousands of podcast listeners. Head to platform.productcoalition.com to find out some more. Now, before we do get stuck into the episode, I need to give a thanks to some businesses and individuals that have already made significant donations to the fundraiser. First up is UserPilot. UserPilot is a code-free user onboarding and adoption tool designed especially for product management teams. UserPilot helps to increase conversion, user retention rates, and reduce churn by guiding new users to their first aha moment with interactive walkthroughs, contextual product tours, and onboarding checklists. It allows product managers to build fully customizable, behavior-triggered in-app experiences with a simple visual editor. Head to userpilot.com to grab your demo and get a free trial. Shobit Chug is the Intentional Product Manager. Shobit's a Google product manager, and he helps product managers become product leaders and have careers they can be proud of. Head to intentionalproductmanager.com and sign up for Shobit's free class on the habits that turn product managers into exceptional product leaders and help them move through their careers fast. Product-led teams like Mixpanel and Flexport know that the best time to capture engagement is when a user is already inside the product. That's why they use Chameleon to drive feature adoption, build onboarding flows, and gather feedback. You can give it a go at trychameleon.com/success. I'd also like to thank Rich Mironov and Chris Miles as individual donors to the cause. So today we're going to be talking about how to understand a UX designer in your product team. Looking forward to chatting through with these guys. I don't know if you know, but I actually used to be a designer once upon a time. Before I was a product guy, I was a designer. So I'm really looking forward to chatting through this topic.
I think it's such a natural transition as well, like UX and product owning. It just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, UX is in a lot of different roles, marketing, sales, you're always getting feedback from users.
And so many product managers come from like a BA or an engineering side.
Yes.
So I fly the designer flag as much as I can at any given opportunity. So before we jump into how to understand a UX designer in a product team, would you mind sharing a little bit about yourselves and your own backgrounds and career paths to today?
Yeah. Well, Jayden, I think you should start. Now, we just talked about Australia, and you are half Australian, half Danish, so...
That is very true, yeah. I'm Jayden. I came to Copenhagen actually recently, the last year and a half. My background is actually in educational game design. I was working for the largest edutech company in Australia for 7 years, called 3P Learning. They made mathletics. Right. Got a lot of experience there, kind of coming out of high school and going into a big company like that and learning a lot along the way as I went. Then I decided after leaving that job, time to make a move. I'm half Danish. Let's go check out that side of my heritage, and quickly started looking and reaching out for a UX community here. And then met Helena, and now I'm co-founding CPH UX with her.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
what an adventure.
Cool. Yeah, it's really cool.
Cool. Helena?
It's been a fun year. Yeah, so I'm actually half Danish, half from Uruguay. So it's a very untypical background to have. I have a classic design degree from Kolding Design School, which is one of the 2 university design schools in Denmark. So it's very hard to get into and really, really awesome, but more a kind of conceptual approach and almost a bit artistic in what they do. And I worked a bit I think my heart has always been burning for the startup environment and really, really strongly for UX when I found that was actually a thing. I was just like, yes, this is my calling. And then after being burned really, really badly at my first design job, I just really wanted to create something, a community, to try to avoid other people getting in the same situation as I did. So then CPHX, which is short for Copenhagen User Experience, is now Denmark's largest UX community, but actually started as my master project, being able to dive into people and the research and see what was happening in Copenhagen today, and definitely feeling a need from the designers in the community.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations on building a community. Always like to hear that. How have you found that experience in itself of building and bringing people together?
Oh, it always, I think every startup or any community always has a identity crisis path into it, and it's super hard to make a living from building a community. But it started actually with me starting Ladies.ux after being a part of it in Vancouver, where I lived for a year and a half, and then just seeing that there was this need for more from the community than just a monthly meetup. Back then we also had it only for women. Which makes sense coming from Canada. North America have more bureaucracy and there's more discrimination towards women. But it was a really nice discovery in Denmark that there is actually not that need for it. It's way more equal, the society and the workplaces as well. So that was just a nice eye-opener. So it started from there, then it grew out from it, and then again I started doing it as my master project, and then just continuously doing it for a long time as a passion project. And then I did a talent academy trying to help young designers who are perhaps lacking a bit of professional confidence. So I did a 2-week boot camp with them, really upskilling them and just making them believe in themselves. And then we got the opportunity to open a co-working space, and with that the whole membership and just going full on for it. And then I think I started that in January 2019, and then you joined as co-founder in November 19. So,
So I've definitely come at a later point in the community was already built at that point. That's what attracted me to it, because I started and saw that community coming to the country. And I could see the quality and the people and the passion and just, really Helena's personality really built into this community, this welcoming and approachable kind of person. So, I felt really attracted to it. And now I've just, been helping out with more around business development and bringing my product design skills from Australia to try and bring in road mapping and structure and task managing and just having clear direction.
Right.
So it's been a good kind of back and forth.
Yeah. I think it's funny because I call myself, it was a name that was given to me, but the queen of UX, and not at all saying that I'm not by far the best UX designer in Copenhagen, but I'm really, really actively trying to make it different for the ecosystem in Copenhagen. And obviously what our vision for CPHX is to create an international society where you would be able to tune into a city and understand what is the ecosystem here and what companies are here, what are people looking at, and all this.
Nice. Is Copenhagen the centre for pretty much everything community-wise in UX or business? Any of the other towns or cities in Denmark?
Denmark, I mean, it's not a huge country, right? So I think we have Aarhus and we have Odense and Aalborg as well, 3 other cities. But you can definitely feel that the UX maturity of those cities are not following. And I don't think you see a startup growth in Aarhus and Aalborg, but not as much in Odense. Odense is more a robotics city and a very, very strong student city, university city.
Right.
We've talked about it, and Aarhus, which is the second largest city in Denmark, would definitely not be our next step, because there's simply not enough going on from the UX community for it to make sense for us.
Right.
We would look at big cities like Berlin or Stockholm or London, Barcelona.
Right.
Yeah.
Are there certain cities in Denmark that are known for a particular history or their contribution to industry, such as I'm thinking Geelong in Australia? It's a big car manufacturing sort of town there. Is that the same with Danish towns? They had sort of specialist industries?
Odense with the robotics
Right.
That's kind of the clearest one for me. I wouldn't say. No, I don't think that the other cities kind of claim. Then we have Esbjerg, which is a very strong harbor city, but that's more for like people in the maritime industry, right? So it's not really UX designers. They're not. I don't. It's not my impression that they're technically as developed or a startup or.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Something that I didn't actually know when I first moved here was that Denmark is 3 islands. I literally did not know that.
Oh, it's a mainland and 2 islands.
Yeah, mainland and 2 islands, yeah.
Right.
And, 3 separate parts of Denmark.
Yeah, right.
Right? And Copenhagen being on Sjælland, and then Odense being on Fyn, and then Aalborg and Aarhus on Jylland, which is connected to Germany.
Right.
And just, I was living when I first moved here outside of Copenhagen in a city called Roskilde.
Right.
And was not getting the vibe, right? Was not seeing any events, like it was just like a nice little town that has all the things you need to live, right?
Right, okay.
And then I saw everything happening in Copenhagen. I was taking the train for 45 minutes to get to the event and then be there and then take it home. And then eventually I was like, yeah, I have to move to Copenhagen. You know,
can I ask, was you pronouncing the city names as well as you are now when you first arrived?
No.
No. We've been practicing a lot.
I couldn't say the 3 additional alphabetic words in
Right, okay.
like e, u, o.
Yeah, we have 3 extra letters in Danish.
Yeah.
That are e, u, o.
Yeah.
That is really hard for people to pronounce.
I couldn't do it. Yeah. But now it just comes out. I'm like, that's.
Well, that's why I asked. You just rattled off those city names as if I could just come naturally. Didn't know if that was some genetics, some Danish genetics going on.
Yeah, the tongue is just like, oh, this is natural, you know.
Cool. All right, let's get stuck into talking about UXs in product now. I know you guys focus a lot on skills and competencies and mindsets, and you've got a bit of a model around that. What is the mindset model for you when it comes to successful UX?
Yeah, so the 4 mindset model, or the RCAT model, is a model that I developed because I was seeing a need for something to communicate better. And all the models that I was seeing, design thinking models and these type of things, are great, but it was just really hard for people to really relate to them on a professional level. And it's not about skills and competencies. It's very much about the mindsets, because I do believe in this time and age where the internet is just making so much knowledge accessible. It's easy to build up competencies and skill sets quite fast. I have never touched Sketch before, but if I wanted to, I could sit down for a week and I would be a fucking expert in Sketch. It wouldn't be that hard. So there's no reason to get so caught up in all the skills, because they're easy to acquire. Mm-hmm. What is interesting is the way that people think, because our mindsets are really, really hard to change and really hard to learn. And so I came up with this model. Again, imagine an umbrella, because like UX is really an umbrella term covering a lot of different things you can specialize within and a lot of different focuses. So the umbrella is divided into 4 parts. The first one is for research. And this is the mindset where people are really opening up and they're being curious and they want to know, and they're fine sitting and observing and interviewing and spending a lot of time. Jayden, just feel free to add to it if you...
Yeah, I mean, they're also great at like crafting those questions to ask as well. Like,
right.
what is the purpose for us going out and researching and really find passion and drive in finding those patterns from analysing all of those things. Yeah.
Yeah. The next one is C for concept or conceptualizing. And these are the guys who kind of take the insights that the researchers have found, and then they'll take these insights and turn it into something tangible. And this can be a strategy, it could be a prototype, it could be a service. It's not defined what that is per se, but it's just a matter of taking something intangible and making it tangible.
They're also quite good, like high-level thinkers, like able to be out there and like working with a lot of ideas. Taking in business needs from key stakeholders in the company, also technical constraints from the development department, and also balancing that with the user needs that come through the research and going, okay, all of these things converging together, what does that mean a solution looks like, right? And as Helena said, sketches and prototypes and whatever tools they need to express it, basically.
Then there's A for aesthetics. And these are, usually when we talk about UX, we talk about interfaces, right? And we talk about the UI, what people see when they open a website or an app. And these guys can just get like super nerdy and just sit and pixel push, and it just needs to be perfect and experiment with the right colors. But it was funny because Jayden and I actually talked about it, and like content writing and UX writing is definitely something that we see falling under aesthetics as well, because it's that care for how are people going to understand it.
Yeah, and it's someone that on the visual side I can describe as like someone that's very, they know these design patterns that you see on a lot of websites, like the back button has to be up the top left, or this font complements that font, and this color complements that color, and that will draw people's eyes. And it's another kind of specialization of how to think about a layout, right?
Right.
Then the last one is the T for technical.
Right.
And it shouldn't be confused with a developer or an engineer. But the technical designer will usually be able to code a bit. They will be able to make design libraries with like code components that the developers then will work from. So they have a more systematic and technical approach to things. Yeah.
So they have usually would have some kind of experience or draw towards working in a product team, right, and understanding how development works, so they can take from that big pipeline of events that we just described and represent that with the development team, right, like representing the user needs and making sure it's communicated well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so that's 4 mindsets.
Yeah.
Yep.
And of course, every designer has dipped their toes in all 4 of them.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing wrong saying we can work within all 4, but the normal designer will have 2 of these mindsets that they prefer to work within. And then there's again where you might have a strength in aesthetics, but you actually really want to focus on the research. And this is again a way to make sure that your employees are performing the place where they're actually inspired and they feel like they can really move.
Yeah.
On top of the ARCAD model, we kind of have like a mid-level, which is called management, because you can be on all 4 mindsets, but you can still like, there's the people who just want to execute their entire life, and that there's nothing wrong with this, but then there's the people who wants to become leaders and they want to manage other people, and they do have another mindset, which is again, it's just important. Do you want to be a leader or do you not want to be a leader? Because again, you need to make sure that people get hired for the right roles.
Yeah.
Managing those different types of mindsets, what does a good leader look like? Would they typically come from, so if you've got a strong technical based UX team, let's say, because that's the needs of the type of business you're in, should the leader also come from that sort of background, or is it a flip and the opposite? They bring a different weight.
Wouldn't it be lovely if there was just one answer? I think that very much depends on the team. What do you have in your, what is in your basket, right? What skills do you already have in your company? And that is super hard to. It would be awesome to just say, yeah, this is the perfect combination. But the point is that everything is affected by each other.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think it also really depends on the project, right? Often when I'm talking to companies, and this is the beauty of the ARCAD model, it's a universal language that we're using to match make, right? And also just bring clarity around the industry that is quite immature here, right? And we're trying to raise it. When I talk to companies, I ask them what project where their project is at right now, or what they're working on. And usually a project that is very new and establishing, like very new direction, or they're a startup and they're building something for the first time, it's important to prioritize the early parts of those mindsets, like the research and the concepts, because as we described, that seems very important at early stages. And then if a project's already existing and they've got users giving them feedback and they've got already a big functioning team, that's when, working with technical and the aesthetics, it might just be a redesign or, tweaking things is more of a requirement. So to answer your question around leadership, my suggestion would be around looking at the project you're working on, and then, sometimes you might just bring on a leader that might fill the gap, right? If you're going in another direction, or if you're just tweaking and most of your team is technical, then it might be fine to just have a technical leader as well. Yeah.
In my mind, this also sort of follows the double diamond as well, like very research driven over on the left, or very delivery driven or technical focus over on the right there. For those that are in one of those four groups right now and would want to shift, what would you suggest as an approach of going about that? So, for instance, you talked about you could go and study a tool such as Sketch and build up that, but how do you go deep on a mindset change?
I think practicing your craft is the way to get into that. And I think it's going to be very clear to you if you being in research, you need to have some patience, right? I personally struggled with that patience, so that's also why it will naturally not come to me to do that. But we do see a lot of people who have started in the aesthetics. They've been visual graphic designers that then want to move more towards conceptualizing and the research area. And what I recommend is literally go to events. Is it too noisy?
No, it's okay.
Okay. Go to events, be inspired, talk to other people who work in that field, listen to podcasts, do online courses, read books, again, try to have a conversation with other people about what you read, because the mindset shift is not something that you can just do with a whip of a wand, right? It's something that you have to put in a lot of energy into and train yourself and again, hopefully feel inspired and passionate about that. Yeah. It should be where you're I'm sucking it up because it's just so interesting. I just want to be here.
Yeah, I think it's it's a perspective thing, as you said, right? As soon as you know about it or you're getting inspiration from books or the world in whatever way of reaching out. For me personally, I've done all of those areas, right? And I identify more with some than others, and it's just about doing it and trying it. And some people feel that was good, but the business is telling me to be over here. And I think what I hope we can do is by helping people identify with this model, they can sort of identify the experience that they've had and where they've had the most passion. Because we ask them, what are you good at now and where do you want to be? Or where have you had the best experience? And then sometimes, more often than not, it's actually they're not doing the things that they want to do. It's really interesting.
When I was in Cardiff, I actually talked on this topic a little bit with Peter Swarif as a data science director. And in that space, they obviously hire a lot of PhD or master's graduates who come out of a strong research function because it's the educational world and they're coming out of that research-driven educational concept and moving then into their first data science job. And the world around them is shifted massively then from being afforded a lot of time and space to work through the research side of their work, and they have to shift and learn different mindsets pretty rapidly. Yeah. Do you see that, or have you found that with graduates in the UX or design space as well?
I mean, some of the volunteers we've had in, we were just talking about it the other day, finding this balance between being iterative and quick in business, right? Business is a fast-paced type of work. And as you said, coming from an academic research background, then you're afforded a lot of time. And you have to be iterative with your research, basically, right? We can't afford to have 3 months of just hard research for 100% confidence. We want you to do part A of that, be 100% confident, so then we can iterate on the product like that and then do it again and do it again within that 3 months.
So that ability to move fast. I suppose even if you're not 100% confident at some point.
Yeah, as confident as you can
using research to reduce the assumptions, but you're confident to still keep going with the assumptions?
I think it's a general problem that the universities they're just not able to keep up with the professional industries. So even though they're trying their best, they're still like a little bit behind. But then again, I want to say that I think that it's good to know how to do that extensive research, because then you know how to cut off. If you only know how to do the very, very brief and short, perhaps a bit superficial research, it's really hard to do those extensive things. And then I did a podcast interview once with Luba van Huygen, and she said, if you want to do research, you should be in fintech, because they have the money to actually put into research being properly done. So it's also looking at what industry are you actually in, and do they actually have the time and the money to do that, right?
It's been interesting. So when I first moved here, I was freelancing for a while, and I was part-time helping out Helena at CPHUX. And I often had to write contracts or proposals for companies I was freelancing with. And in my old job, a lot of the time, research was looked at as this thing that just would take such a long time, and it's expensive, and we don't have the time for that. And then I realized, as I'm writing out these proposals for companies, I'm quoting how much it's going to cost, and you look at the development cost, and you look at the cost and the time it takes to do the research and the concept and like early design, and it's so much cheaper to do that early design. Yes, it takes 6 weeks or whatever, and that 6 weeks could be development, but that developer costs a bunch of money, right?
Yeah.
So you want to be confident, right? So there's a little bit of a, I don't know why there's such an anxiety around research sometimes as well, right? Like it's going to save you money if you're not making mistakes.
Patience. It's the art of patience. People want to be doing and building and showcasing.
And maybe it's a communication factor of like, look at this value from a business perspective that isn't well communicated from researchers or something. But yeah, having a more holistic sort of pitch could probably help. Yeah.
There are obviously industries where research just naturally is given more respect.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
Unfortunately, they're typically not just software development for retail consumer spaces.
Yeah.
It's normally in that science functions or high risk industries where everything has to be exact and you can't be afforded any risk.
Very true.
The UX community nowadays, is it still focused on the retail side of building apps and websites and e-commerce experiences, or is there now a lot more attention on those sort of proprietary B2B software services that used to be clunky because it was more of a utility function and an experience? Are you seeing an uplift there?
I mean, that's not really on the UX designers to choose, right? That's based on the companies that are like thriving, and the companies that are able to hire designers and actually acknowledge that that's a value. I think we have a good variety of really interesting things in Copenhagen. I think we're seeing some really innovative projects. I remember being in Vancouver and being in the very young startup environment, and I was just like seeing a lot of those bullshit ideas where it was people who were just trying to make a breakthrough and make some money, and they didn't care about what they were actually building. I think in Copenhagen we see a very stronger movement of people actually being very, very dedicated to what they're building.
And some of the bigger companies as well, right? They're doing these innovation labs and break-off things. So
no, I don't think that retail is actually not that large of a role in Copenhagen UX scene. I think we're seeing more interesting advanced products coming out. I want to mention one, if you don't mind.
Please do.
It's called Corti, and it's this. They working with sound recognition, and when people are calling in to report some person who's getting a cardiac arrest, then that software can actually analyze how people are talking and help the healthcare provider that's on the phone, giving them better advice.
Wow.
So I mean, that's not just
nice
off-the-shelf products, right? This is like really, really advanced and something that is really helping people make better choices. And I think that's personally, as a designer, I think that would be very fulfilling to have a job like that. But it depends on your values.
There's a really cool app as well that I downloaded the other day for, it's like a community to help blind people.
Right.
Brilliant. Be My Eyes.
Be My Eyes.
Yeah.
And you're basically you sign up for the app and it's just in the background with notifications turned on, and people with seeing problems are also on that app and can call for help, and then it will reach out to everyone that doesn't have seeing problems with a notification saying someone needs your help, and you go into a video call with them and they're like, I had one guy so far, he's like, my shoes, do they look in good condition? I'm not sure, should I throw them out or should I get some new ones? And I was like, look, I would wear them, they look great. Just give him a bit of leather polish and whatever, and he's like, oh yeah, thanks. I think it was from America somewhere.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. It's so much more useful than the wake up alarm clock thing that was about 4 years ago, where it told you if someone wanted waking up and give you a notification. So you then jumped on the phone and you was their alarm clock and they could hear you talking.
Oh God, who are you?
That's a much better use of that technology, of using the crowd. Fantastic. I wouldn't mind talking to you guys about the role of UX within a startup or a business versus the role of UX in an agency, where the pressures and needs of having multiple clients, quite often tighter deadlines, maybe less creative freedom as well, can mean a completely different type of UX role. And obviously every agency will be different, as with any client-side business as well. But for those looking to move into UX, what are some of the pros and cons of going client-side versus agency?
I think both startups and agency are actually the two type of companies where you have a lot of focus on speed. I think that's actually one of the things that are similar to those two compared to working with government or working with corporates. Yeah. But obviously when you work as an in-house designer, you do in a startup, you're going to follow that product. You're going to see how it develops. You're going to be there for all the little small details. Whereas when you are in an agency, you're handing off. So you're never really seeing anything being finished. And you never know. You might give the client gold and they'll turn it into trash because they're not understanding it correctly. So I think that's what I'm hearing. The pros and cons I'm hearing from the agency side is the cons is that you get so much variety. You get to do all these different things, and because you're also working in a very high-paced work environment, there's also a lot of parties, and there's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of let's go to a conference and have fun, and they have the budget to also just be go do that. Whereas in the startups, depending on the startups and if they're getting some funding and all this, it can be a lot of hard work. But again, I think there's still that camaraderie that you have with your team, at least if you're in a decent startup, where you're really connecting, and you can everybody is in on it. Everybody wants to see this product succeed, right? So you have a dedication that's just on a completely different level than when you're just being paid to do something.
Yeah, right.
There's something around startups that I want to say, especially with the small ones. If you're coming into the industry as your first startup job, as your first UX job, I feel and correct me if I'm wrong, you would learn more in an agency because you'll be having other designers around you, right? And in a startup, you may be the only UX designer there, right? So you will have to lead a lot of things and do a lot of different roles as well.
Yeah, I definitely would not necessarily, unless you're a very independent human being, I wouldn't suggest being in a startup as a junior, because you're getting so much responsibility. And if you are, I would really recommend you to get a mentor, so somebody that you can bounce ideas off and just be should I do this, or where should I go with that, and just share those frustrations with, because that was my mistake. I was a junior in a startup, and everybody was looking at me as this both creative but also user guru, and I was just I don't know, I'm just trying things and I really wanted to succeed, but I don't know. And I wish that I would have had a mentor. Even a mentor would have given me so much more direction.
Yeah,
I've seen as well in startups the UX person, particularly if it's one, is used for anything and everything creative.
Yeah.
So they're also the person who does the sales collateral and the business card design, and so the attention and time they really get to give the product is really discounted quite heavily because everything else gets thrown at them.
Yeah.
Especially you got Photoshop, you can just do any of these
you use that tool,
related tasks.
Yeah, and I really don't like the merged. You've probably seen it a lot. The merged position of UX/UI because they're so different.
Yeah.
Like there's similarities, but like the type of work you're doing is vastly different in a lot of ways. Someone's going to be UI is much more pixel pushing and can probably help out with marketing collateral and business cards and redesigns and whatever. And then UX is like, it's more to it, way more to it. And you're trying to push those things together and end up probably giving them everything, right?
A lot of the time I've seen the UX/UI when I've spoke to people that have applied or taken those jobs. Yeah. It really means UI design.
Yeah.
And if we get any spare time, we'll let you do some UX. Yeah. It's never the UX bit as the primary focus.
That's really true.
But it's funny because I think that a lot of people in the industry see UI as like this big thing, where it's like no, UX is actually where the really big and complication, like there's way more levels to UX, and it's kind of being treated as the little sister sometimes, where it's not even the big sister, it's the mama or daddy or like whatever you want to call it.
The other thing with regards to if you're in a small business as a UXer, to come back to the model we was talking about earlier, is I imagine the exposure to learn and see other mindsets at work is reduced heavily, and therefore you're going to be going into that second or third career role with much more of a focused mindset. How do you think people who might have been down that path could recognise it in themselves, that there are other mindsets and they're not exposing themselves enough to what they may be?
Come talk to us. Have
a conversation.
Yeah, have a conversation. Go to events, reach out to other people, talk to them about their roles. It's that perspective thing. Once again, read blogs, whatever.
I think that's why I started my podcast, which is called Why UX, because it was really, that podcast is really interviewing other people, like different designers, the everyday designers, the ones that you don't see on the stages, the ones that don't write the books, but are just everyday producing really great content and research or whatever. And that podcast is really about interviewing how people got into UX, what they do on a daily basis, and what they see the future bringing. Again, to create that transparency about the diversity that is within that field. And I think what I'm hearing from people is that they're resonating on different levels with different people, and it's really nice that we don't have to be the same.
Yeah. For UXers in product teams, what are some of the things you could recommend that they do to increase their presence or increase their ability to practice some of what we've been talking about so far?
I would say get more of a business mindset.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah. I feel like the universities teach they probably cover some business stuff. I don't know, I haven't been to university, but from what I hear, it's a lot of very traditional, you've got to cover the design, you've got to cover the research, and it's all about the UX process, but not a lot about understanding how to build a business. And especially if you're in a startup, you need to really understand that. And to get your ideas across in a product team, you need to get better at pitching, right? If you're a business owner and pitching to investors, right? You need to talk the same language. Yeah. Right? This research, like I said before, with that example of how much development costs, this research right now, if you're a researcher, will trickle down and save money over here, right? Because we won't have to repeat work. It'll be very focused and directed. And if you're a conceptualizer, just making sure that you speak the language of the business when you're a UX designer. Yeah.
Completely agree.
I know from my time, show my age a little bit here, but it was graphic design back in the day. And I remember for about 8 weeks just tracing typography on a light box repeatedly to learn the shapes and forms of letters and all the little serifs and everything. There was no commercial side to graphic design then. It was just do the graphic design, almost as as an order taker.
Yeah.
You know, you'll be
Yeah.
given a brief from an advertising agency. You need to fulfill that brief, and there was no conversation or education around why that design needs to be turned around in 8 hours and what return on investment you're expecting out of that design, or any of those commercial conversations that would go with, back then, the graphic design element.
Yeah, very true, very true.
I think from my podcast, what I'm seeing is also that there is coming more of a shift that UX designers are getting a seat at the round table, at higher management. I think that is a really, really good place to seat UXers, because they just have that holistic view on things. And yes, then the better they become at speaking the business language and making people understand the value, not only from the human side, but also from the business side, the better, the stronger they are, and the more they will be taken serious.
I think that's a good point. They're taking serious that you're not just the design person sat at the table who gets to make things pretty. You're having an impact to all of it.
Exactly. And there's in UX, there's this triple Venn diagram thing where it's user needs, technical needs, and business needs, right? And I feel like the universities teach find the user needs, and the technical needs and the business needs you need to understand those, right? And how to represent those. It isn't just about one voice.
Yeah, it's in the unity that we're really going to make impactful and good user experiences, right?
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of people's career development comes down to their sort of annual planning that we've all had to do in the workplace of what you're going to do this year, your KPIs or whatever it might be called now. And quite often the measurement of success of people there is all around delivering a thing or getting something superficial or very sort of what I would call almost a vanity goal out of the way.
Vanity metrics.
How would you suggest UX people write their goals for the next year that might be more focused on expanding their mindset when we think about expanding models?
That's a really interesting question, because we're just tackling that now as a company, right?
Okay.
There's something called OKRs, which probably a lot of product people know about, objective and key results, and then there's KPIs, and I've been educating myself about them. And when I first thought of planning a roadmap for going forward, I was like, it's all about KPIs. And then I started feeling like, it doesn't quite feel right for what the style of work we have to do, because it's hard to quantify something that doesn't exist yet, right? Or attach a vanity metric. And after doing some research, I learned that the KPIs are good to move a metric that already exists, right? So if you have members and a churn rate and you want to change that churn rate, that's an easy KPI, right? But if you're doing a research project, you don't really, there's no vanity metric or KPI
prospecting
for that, right? So that's when you turn to the OKRs, the objective, right? The objective is to research, analyze, and understand better our churned users or whatever. And then the key metrics are conduct 5 interviews with this person, do analysis, and make a presentation and a meeting to all of the company about the value of what you've discovered. And I think at that point, that gives that success metric, right? And you should feel proud of achieving all those things. And I think that OKR, if you think about, if you're researching churned users, it is affecting that KPI of churn rate, right? Because you're bringing understanding to it. It's just hard to say it's going to change it by 5%, right? It's hard. You can't really attach the two. But I think there is you should attach the two in a abstract kind of way, right? That would be my advice around that.
Brilliant. Fantastic. I've really enjoyed talking through with you guys. This has been brilliant. Thank you so much for inviting me down and having a chat.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
and for those listening, the name of the community again, what's the website address we can find out more information?
cphux.com. But I would say right now follow us on social media instead, where we are called CPHUX Official.
Cool.
That's where you can get a better sense of what we're up to and what we're doing, really. But again, it is really focused on Copenhagen.
Nice.
It's not focused about Malmö or the cities around. It's really trying to, again, make sure that when you come to Copenhagen, you get a sense. We want to be that light tower that people can go to and see, okay, here I can see what events are relevant, I can see what jobs are happening, and again, meet other designers and all that. Yeah.
Fantastic. And the model, the mental or the mindset model you was talking about earlier, is it reach out to yourself, Helena?
Yeah, right now there's not really anything published. It's still like our hidden little gem.
Nice.
That we were, not that it's not supposed to be, but we just haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
All good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so if people reach out to you,
feel free
direct
to reach out to both Jayden and I.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and if you're in Copenhagen and you are looking for a UX design job, we've actually just, if you check out our social media, we just published a candidate form for people to fill out for us to actually be on the lookout for them. So check us out there and sign up for that, and we can have a chat.
Brilliant. Nice tip. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you.
A pleasure. Thank you. Thank you all for listening to this episode of the Product Coalition European Tour podcast. This was the first in Copenhagen. I've got a few more for you coming up. If you've enjoyed this episode or any of the episodes from the Product Coalition European Tour, please remember that they're all done and committed to raising awareness and funds for the bushfire affected communities, wildlife and volunteer firefighters in Australia. So if you'd like to support any of those causes, head over to bushfire.productcoalition.com and you can do so there. Thanks for listening. Until the next episode, goodbye.